Hey everyone, I've been sharing a few tips over the last few days with my email list over at smilinggardener.com and a few of them up on Facebook as well, but I haven't made a video about it, so I thought I'd do that today. And the tips are mainly about what you can do this fall to improve your soil and get it ready for next year. I know some of you are in the Southern Hemisphere, and so these tips might not seem as relevant, although a few of them are still really useful to do in the spring too, but I was really thinking about the autumn gardeners right now. I'll also mention that my online organic gardening course is open for enrollment right now, but just today, just until tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern time. So if you've been thinking about that, you can go have a look. I'll put a link down below. I won't be opening up enrollment again until spring of 2017, I expect. So some of these tips. So the main one that I remember talking about first that I think is interesting is if you're growing an annual vegetable garden with tomatoes and squash and potatoes and things like that, a lot of people will remove everything at this time of year and hopefully put it into a compost pile at least, in which case that's all right. But just as good is to just leave it right there, because it'll keep growing until frost and it'll keep feeding soil life, and the roots will keep feeding microorganisms in the soil. So it's really useful to have it still growing there. It doesn't look as nice, I know, but it's a useful thing to do. There's no problem with doing that. It'll eventually be broken down and become part of your mulch. If you do want to remove it, that's when you like to bring in a cover crop. And there's still time for most of you to plant a cover crop. You like to have at least a few weeks before frost. So some of you, it's getting a little bit late, but something there to protect your soil and continue feeding the soil life and continue holding nutrients in the soil that would otherwise get washed away if you just left the soil bare. The other thing you can obviously do as well, which many of you know by now, is to take all the leaves that are falling on your garden and rake them into the garden. Take some of your grass clippings and rake it in there as well. Go steal your leaves from your neighbors and rake them in there, and they do a lot of things in the garden. Another tip I mentioned this week is whenever you're pulling weeds, you don't have to take those away from the garden unless they happen to be incredibly invasive weeds or opportunistic weeds that you don't want to have growing there. Most weeds, you just pull them, leave them on the soil as a mulch, and they become part of your mulch. Two other tips that I left. One was also about cover cropping. Something I've started this year is I have a lot of lawn around my garden, and some of that lawn I allowed it to grow taller. And in my case, I even dug a nice edge around it so it looked like it was kind of on purpose. It looked like it was part of the garden, but this is like a cover crop outside of the garden. So I can just, anytime I need some mulch, I can go and mow or somehow cut that grass down and bring that in as a mulch, but otherwise it just keeps growing and doing a lot of beneficial things like inviting beneficial insects and things like that. So that's kind of like a cover crop outside the garden, is letting your lawn grow long. And the other tip I shared about organic matter was just about composting, because some people don't have the space or just don't want to have a compost pile, but you do have food scraps that you want to get rid of. So what you can do is just whenever your pail gets full is you go out into your garden and dig a hole or a trench that's about 12 inches deep, bury the food scraps in there, and then cover them back up with the soil from that hole. And in a few months, that will become really nice soil. You'll really be improving the organic matter content of your soil. So all of these tips I've been sharing are especially about improving organic matter content of the soil, which is a wonderful thing. And we organic gardeners are often really good at that. And there'll be some nutrition in there as well if you're bringing your food scraps in and things like that. But one thing we often neglect as organic gardeners is balancing the specific nutrients in our soils that are so important for certain things to happen. And if you want to do that really well, you want to get a soil test, and it's a little bit more of an involved process. But the mineral that I mention often is calcium, because most of our gardens are deficient in calcium. And it's just so important for everything else to go well in your garden to have enough calcium there. So if you are if you're doing a lot of this organic stuff like composting and mulching and cover cropping, and you still have pest problems, or you have you're just not getting the harvests that you want out of your garden, it's time to start thinking more about the mineral side of things, and calcium is the place to start. So I often recommend 10 pounds of calcium carbonate or calcitic limestone, and this is a great time of year to bring it in there. And even without a soil test, you can do that. With most minerals, you want a soil test, but with the calcium, it's okay. Not dolomite lime, you want more of an agricultural calcium carbonate or calcitic lime. So that's it. I can go on forever about this, but I just wanted to share that with you. Oh yeah, there were a few questions that people were asking as I was sharing these tips this week. One of them was about using eggshells in the garden. Apologize for the hammering in the background. That's a neighbor doing something. Eggshells in the garden, yeah, you can totally use them for calcium. They're wonderful, but by my math, you would need about 2,000 of them to bring you that 10 pounds of calcium, of that calcitic lime that I like to use for 1,000 square feet. So you need a lot of eggshells. If you have a very small area, then yeah, they're wonderful. You can break them up and use them. The other question was about duct tape, because I had these roses in a photo and I was saying that these roses are in a mason jar because mason jars are good for everything, just like duct tape is good for everything. And I said that when I was a kid, I used to think duct tape was called duck tape, like the bird. Someone actually emailed me and said it was called duct tape. So in my next email, I said, turns out it was called duct tape. And then a few people emailed me and said, no, it was actually duct tape. So I've looked it up online, and what I found, I'm not positive that it's true, but they say that it was actually invented for the military, and it was very waterproof, so they started calling it duct tape after the bird. It was just like a slang term. And then this was in World War II, so after the war, people started realizing it was good for a lot of things, including doing duct work, and so it became duct tape. So some people say it actually was originally called duct tape as slang. I think that's all. I think that's enough talking. So if you are interested in getting into my online organic gardening course, I'll put a link down below. You want to make sure you do that today, or otherwise wait 6 months or so. And I think I said everything, so have a good day. And you won't be hearing from me too much over the winter because I'll be working with my students in the course. So have a good winter.